Good morning, good morning, good morning. Okay, it is another Dungeons and Dragons adventuring gear live stream, basically. We're going to talk about bags of flour, or flour. Essentially, that's the topic for today. I know it sounds like a weird topic to speak about with regard to Dungeons and Dragons, but I can't count the number of times people have talked about flour and how useful it is. And so I did a bit of research. I've got a bit of experience using flour in Dungeons and Dragons, not outside of Dungeons and Dragons. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to give you a presentation on what I have compiled. Now, I'll put the start time for this video down in the description, but the video does go unlisted. The live streams go unlisted. Therefore, you can't actually access them unless you're a part of the live stream itself, or you go through your notifications. You won't be able to access it. Other than that, patrons get access to live streams later on. Okay, but I do an edited version of all of my live streams, but it will not include all the Q&A at the end. So if you haven't been part of my videos before, or my live streams, should I say, part of my live streams, what you'll find is I do my presentation first. The sound is working fine, which is good. Once I've done the presentation, I then open it up for questions and answers at the end of the live stream. And yes, you will get to see my face. I'm going to use a lot of slides today, or still images, just to break things up and just to hopefully make it a little bit more interesting. My face is not that interesting. And also too, it's more interesting for me. Okay, so sit back, grab a drink or some food, whatever you're doing, and let's talk about flour. Hi, welcome to HowtoDandD. My name is Fred Weller, and today I want to talk about Dungeons and Dragons 5e. And the topic for today is how to use a bag of flour in your Dungeons and Dragons 5e game. Okay, that sounds like a strange topic. So how and what can you use mundane bags of flour for Dungeons and Dragons in 5e? There have been so many different suggestions. I went and approached the Dungeons and Dragons community on Facebook. They gave me a huge list of potential options. I am going to speak about invisible creatures, but I'm leaving that to the last because it is the most contentious and the most difficult to actually do right. So let's start off with number one. You can throw the flour in the air, stand back when you do this, then you want to apply an open flame to the light dust that is drifting in the air. Because it's so fine, it will explode, it will ignite, and you get what is called a dust explosion. So that's one way you can use your flour if you really wanted to. I would suggest using something like a firebolt or a flame spell or a fire spell from a distance. But yes, you do still have to throw the flour into the air. If that doesn't sound like a particularly good idea, number two is you could just trade it in for something more useful if you feel like a bag of flour is really not that useful to you. Number three, you can use flour as a counterweight. Indiana Jones found that a counterweight with sand was useful. Why not use a bag of flour? You position that bag of flour on the pressure plate to compensate for the loss of weight that has been removed from the pressure plate. So there's another way of using your bag of flour. You can make bread with flour. You just need to add water and salt and you have essentially bread. Now I know there are other agents that go with flour, water and salt to make bread so it will rise, but you can make a damper. It's a sort of like a very simple bread that we would make if we were camping without having to use things like baking powder and other types of things. If you feel like you need to disguise yourself, you could disguise yourself with flour and appear to be a ghost so that you can scare off your enemies. So sprinkle yourself with flour or throw it in the air, let it collect all over you because flour tends to stick to pretty much anything, particularly if it's moist, and the human body is made up of about 80% of water, so the chances are it's going to stick to you. So that's not going to be a problem, and you can disguise yourself now as a ghost. You can take that bag of flour and throw it handfuls of it into the eyes of your enemies, so you can blind them so they can't see where they are. And then of course you get advantage on any attacks against them, and they get disadvantage on any attacks that they make against you. Of course they still have to figure out where you are, and since they can't see you unless they have some sort of special sight, it's not going to work very well. They still have to guess your location. You can use flour to detect the airflow behind a secret door or hatch. Now here's the thing, you still have to have a pretty good guess that there's probably going to be a secret door in that location. Otherwise, sprinkling flour around the walls and so forth to see if there's air travelling through there is only going to work if there is in fact air blowing through the secret door. Otherwise you're never going to be able to use your flour to detect that secret door. So it's really dependent on an airflow. No airflow or no gap, if it's a tight seal, then it's not going to shift that light flour in any way whatsoever. You can spread the flour out on a hard surface, and this will allow you to reduce the friction on that hard flat surface so that you can slide a heavy object around. It's basically a way of reducing friction. It's one of the things or benefits of having flour. Something that is not quite so useful with something like chalk, which tends to be more grippy, whereas flour is a lot more slippery. If you've ever dropped flour on a hard surface like a concrete floor that's been painted, and then you've got flour on there and then you step on it, you know how slippery and slidey it gets. It can be quite dangerous. So yes, really good for reducing friction in those situations where you need to be able to move something that's heavy. Flour can be mixed with water and other elements to make a sticky paste or glue. So if you want to stick something to something else, you can create your own glue with a bag of flour, some water, and often they would use salt as well. Pretty basic elements. So if you're going to take flour, make sure to take some salt as well, otherwise it's going to be a bit hard to sort of make it all work. Another aspect, I would say number 10, is blow that flour into the air to help you detect a tripwire. Now here's the problem with using flour to detect a tripwire. You have to have a pretty good idea of where the tripwire is in the first place, and that there is a tripwire or potentially a tripwire close by. Otherwise you're going to look really stupid blowing flour into the air constantly as you're travelling, and chances are you'll wind up covered in this stuff as well, rather than actually detecting any tripwires. But if you suspect there might be a tripwire or a number of tripwires in that area, blowing the flour dust into the air would allow you to see where those tripwires are situated. You can fill eggshells with flour and ground pepper to make a mace or pepper grenade. And then you throw that, you punch like a small hole in the top of the eggshell, fill it up with flour and ground pepper, and then when you hurl it at somebody, it will break open and cover them in flour and the pepper. Now the pepper is what really is going to do the greatest damage. Now for those of you who are aware of some of the stupid things that people get up to, flour bombing people is certainly something that has come up, where they take like a bag of flour that breaks open, they throw it at somebody, and it winds up all over their face and in their mouth. It's quite horrible. So you could do the same sort of thing in your game. So that's why I'm talking about sort of like the flour bomb, you might say. You can throw the flour into the air and make a dust cloud while you escape. So if you need some cover, you need like a dust cloud, well the flour can do that because it will float in the air for quite a little while. You won't find it gives you the kind of cover that smoke does. It's not going to be quite as good as that. If you're the kind of person who really loves to play in flour, then maybe you can get into synchronized flour dancing, and maybe that's something that you could use it in your game if you feel inclined. I'm not sure how useful that will be, but certainly it's an option, right? It's an option. You can add water to flour to make a paste, and you can use that paste to mark a location, either with a letter or a number or just a cross to indicate that you've been in this location already. So it's basically just a way of creating something. If you don't have chalk, you can use flour and water and make a paste for marking a location. Okay, here is the last one, number 14. This is the one that people always quote as being the most useful aspect of flour. The only problem is that flour is not quite so easy to use when detecting invisible creatures. It is often claimed to be useful for finding an invisible creature, but in fact it's very hard to achieve successfully. And there's a couple of things, one, that you need to understand when you try to use flour to detect invisible creatures. And that is, one, that area that you're using, the area really needs to already be covered in flour for them to be able to step on the flour so you can see where their footprints are. Remember, they can move quite quickly. The chances are they can move as fast as you, 30 feet, or faster, maybe 25 feet if they're really small and slow. But essentially they can move quite quickly. So an invisible creature is going to move through that space unless you already have the flour dusted along the ground or it's floating in the air. The chances are you're not going to detect that invisible creature. So it's already got to be covering the area to start off with, particularly when you're dealing with a large area. That's one of the biggest hassles with using flour. Another huge problem is that the area that the invisible creature is in or moving around in needs to really be the size of a cupboard. It needs to be quite small. Otherwise, it's going to take a long time to cover a large area with flour so you can detect that invisible creature while it's bombarding you with, if it's got greater invisibility, it can be shooting you with bolts, arrows, other ranged attacks, or even making a melee attack against you. And there's no provoking attacks of opportunity or getting an opportunity attack because you can't see them. Okay, so spells, they can hurl a spell, change their location, so you really need a very small space. Otherwise, the creature needs to be very close to you. Now, if the invisible creature is close to you, the chances are it's already doing lots and lots of horrible things to you and creating a huge problem. So just bear that in mind when you think you're going to use that flour. Okay, now, given that you've got a large area to deal with, and there's an invisible creature that can move about 30 feet or 60 feet if they want to around that location, trying to figure out where they are, if you are only able to sprinkle one bag of flour out in a 5-foot square every turn, which is probably what the Dungeon Master is going to allow, you're never going to find that invisible creature. So the only way to find that invisible creature is to be flying and to go for a crop dusting technique where you cover a large area from the air very quickly, and you might need to use something like a bag of holding and turn out the whole bag so all of the flour is released. Remember, you need to be moving quite quickly, and it's going to require an awful lot of negotiation with your Dungeon Master. But the only way that I can see this working successfully in a large area is to be able to do some sort of crop dusting maneuver with your flour from the air that covers the area where you think the invisible creature is moving around. Otherwise, you're never going to find them, and they're going to pepper you with fire until you are dead, or until you've had enough and you run away. Now, I hope this was entertaining, interesting, useful, educational in some way to you. If it has been, that's great news. If you want to watch more videos like this, I do have a series of videos on how to use Dungeons & Dragons adventuring gear. There's a couple of videos there now. The series is getting quite large. I think there's about 8 videos. If that's not the sort of thing you're interested in, I have hundreds of videos for players and Dungeon Masters, which you are welcome to go and check out. If you want to support the channel so I keep doing videos like this, then I have a Patreon page where you get access to the live streams that go unlisted, and you also get access to exclusive content. On top of that, I also give priority to patrons in terms of the content that I make on my channel. If you want to continue to support me, there are other ways, such as the affiliate links down in the description to Amazon and the book depository. I have a merchandise shelf where you can buy stuff there, and I get a small commission from that. Make sure to share, like, and subscribe. Hit the bell button to be notified when I go live and when I publish new videos. And hey, till next time, keep rolling those 20s. I'm not gone. I'm just putting my glasses on, getting a drink of water. All right, questions and answers. Oh, all right. Get my ears in the right place. I don't know. Maybe. All right, let's have a look at the Q&A. Let's look at the live stream. Now, hopefully, this has answered some of the questions people might have had. I can tell you now, just in terms of the last use for flower, I have found that finding invisible creatures with flower to be hugely difficult, and it's never been successful. Instead, we've wound up wasting our time trying to sprinkle a bag of flour in a 5-foot square. And, even if you have everybody doing that, you still can only, if you've got a group of 5, that's only 5 squares every round. And of course, the invisible creature can see where you're throwing the flour, just make sure they don't stand there. So you're sort of screwed. Okay. Save or die, how's it going? Boss Quasar 93891, how's it going? Hi Scott, hello. Now, Alexandra, I don't know if I've pronounced that right. It's a little bit hard. From the spelling, I'm assuming that's essentially what we're going for. Is this video like a joke showing the versatility in D&D, or is it actually a common use case? Okay, so part of this is jest. Okay, so part of this video is jest and part of it is legitimate. Okay, so when I talked about a lot of the elements that you could use flour for, so things like the dust explosion are real. A counterbalance or counterweight for a pressure plate, that's all real. You can make bread from it, a little bit in jest, but I know it's still something you can do if you wanted to, particularly if you've got a situation where you need to have bread available. You can use it to disguise yourself. A little bit of jest involved in that one. Throwing it in somebody's eyes to get them to blind them. Look, it's done in real life, so you can definitely should be able to do it in Dungeons and Dragons, unless your dungeon master's not up for that sort of thing. Detecting the airflow behind, or for where a secret door might be. Certainly you can use it to detect airflow, or if you've got a strong moving river or current, you can detect which way it's traveling and where it's going. So the flower will sort of follow that track, and because it shows up, it's easy to sort of see. Spreading it on a hard surface is legitimate. You will find, I'm not joking or mucking around with that one. That's all absolutely legit. It is used for making glue. I used to use flour, water and salt for making a paste for paper mache. It's only really useful for gluing paper together rather than other things. Although if you leave it long enough, it can glue other things together. But the problem is if it gets wet, it just all comes apart. That's the only hassle. Using it to detect a tripwire, now that would be legitimate. Somebody said you could use flour for detecting fingerprints, but the problem is Dungeons and Dragons, there is no record of people's fingerprints. We're talking about, our world where there would be records of fingerprints. Fingerprints, who cares in a Dungeons and Dragons world? It won't make the slightest difference to anybody. They won't care because there's no records. Things like the eggshells and the pepper grenade, they are real things that you can do in the real world, so you should be able to apply that to a Dungeons and Dragons game. Using it as a dust cloud, I was jesting in terms of the picture of the dancing guy, but you can still throw it in the air to cover your escape. Using it to mark a location, that's all legit. And in terms of the invisibility stuff, I was pretty candid and pretty honest. I wasn't really taking the piss out of that in any way. So that was all quite legit, if you were wondering. Okay. Baking cakes. Yes, you big kid, you're right. You could use it for baking a cake. Flour dust explosions have been in the game once. DM said that there were no explosives in his world. He didn't count on my resourcefulness. Yeah, well, there's the problem, because you've still got to convince the dungeon master that throwing the dust in the air and lighting it will cause an explosion. A lot of and it's got to spread quite a long way. Remember, the explosion will only go as far as the ignitable flour is floating in the air, and it needs to be, if it starts to dissipate too much and it's not dense enough, it won't explode. Okay, Leon Gunnett, what do you got here? Also useful on Call of Cthulhu adventures. Invisible creatures. Yeah, well, we've talked about invisible creatures. Problematic using flour. Honestly, the most successful way that I've had for detecting where an invisible creature is if it's in a very small location and you can use fairy fire on them to highlight them. Because fairy fire has got a reasonable sort of space, but you have to have a pretty good idea of where they are. But really, it's see invisibility, the spell. There's no substitute for it, and it's the most successful way for dealing with finding invisible creatures in a large area. Most of the time, a small dungeon with tight areas, flour might be useful, but other times it's just not. And I know that I've used invisible mages casting fireball. You're never going to find them. They're just going to pulverize you. Rivers RPG channel. Hi, how's it going? You can also detect footprints with the flour. Yes, you could, but if you put the flour down and they step in it, what is going to happen is they're probably going to see the flour there and not step in it. If you mean detect a footprint that you can't see, if you're throwing the flour over a space to try and detect footprints, that's all very well, but you need to have a fairly good idea of where the footprints are. Otherwise, you've got to spread the flour over a large area for it to be effective. But yes, you could do something like that. I have heard that it's possible to do that. I still feel like the impression that the footprint has left has got to be reasonably substantial for flour to pick it up. And then, of course, you still have to convince your dungeon master that it's possible. So this is where I'm coming from with regard to the use of flour in your Dungeons and Dragons game. What's up, everybody? Hi, Joe. How's it going? Wait, he was actually doing this live? I thought this was a pre-recorded premiere. No. I don't generally do premieres. I suppose I could, but no, I do a lot of my stuff live. My intention is to present my stuff, hopefully as clear and as concise as I possibly can. I've had a lot of practice now. And then what I do is I open it up for questions and answers so people can have a chat with me about the topic. I also talk about anything else. I don't have to necessarily talk about bags of flour and how to use it in Dungeons and Dragons. If you have questions that are regarding anything, whether you're a dungeon master or a player, I will talk about them in my live streams at the end. Always have, and probably always will, provided I still have time. And I do. So that's good news. Hi Scott, how's it going? He's saying hi to Joe. Big Kid, what do you got here? I love these common item strategies for characters that don't have magic, like a thief. Well, I'm glad you like them. I am probably going to continue to do them for some time. I can't make videos on Dungeons and Dragons 5e rules forever because I've done most of the rules that there are. The only thing that I probably haven't covered that I should cover is advanced passive perception. I've done passive perception, but I should probably do a video on advanced passive perception. And I haven't done one on saving throws, which I know has been requested a number of times. My rationale for not doing that particular video is primarily how to organize it and fear. A lot of the things that I do on my channel are totally outside of the comfort zone of most YouTubers. So as a result, I have to be comfortable with the topic before I'm ready to do that. Otherwise it doesn't happen. Rivers RPG channel. What are you using to go live? Okay, so to go live, I've got a computer. Obviously, I'm using a Logitech Brio webcam on a tripod. It's a Manfrotto tripod, which is pretty good. It can sort of move wherever I need it to go. I've got a couple of lamps that I can attach to my desk. I've got a wall tapestry hanging over my whiteboard behind me. It's not a green screen. It helps with the sound impact as well behind me because I've got hard walls in a small area. There's a bit of acoustic foam in various locations. And I'm using OBS. I use OBS in terms of my software. Hopefully that answered your question in terms of what I use for going live. And trust me, going live, that's just the equipment side of things. Getting used to how to do it all is another kettle of fish. Save or die. What do you got here? Sup Rivers. Okay, are you saying hi? You must know each other. You do know each other. Okay, good. GG, I fireball everyone. Okay, well, I suppose you could. Like I said, you throw any kind of dust that's very fine and it floats in the air. It is combustible. It will ignite. Fred, saving throw, nat 20. I don't know. Would I get a nat 20? I very rarely get 20s on my dice rolls. Although I have to say that I've been using the Paladin role-playing game wooden ebony dice, and because they are all sharp edges, which is how you want it to be. Not great if you stand on them, obviously, it hurts, but it's good in terms of it being accurate. And because there's no engraved letters, engraved numbers into it, it's all printed on, it means that the dice is pretty accurate. So I'm getting random rolls rather than something that's sort of unbalanced or out of whack, which is really hard not to do when you manufacture dice. You know, I know that the game science dice were really popular, but I don't think you can get them now. I'm a dad. Hi, how's it going? I'm a dad. I love that Frederick is the D&D tuber that D&D tubers watch. Well, I don't know. Am I the D&D tuber that D&D tubers watch? If that's the case, I know some of them do. I know they have watched some of my videos because I've seen them repeat some of the video content that I've made. But then again, to be fair, I've watched their videos, and I watch a lot of YouTube D&D YouTube videos on various topics and other things, mostly to do with history. And I have made videos based on their topics, but from my perspective, and I've always tried to make them a little bit better if I can. It's not necessarily the case, though. You know, it's pretty hard to do a better job because everybody is spending a lot of time doing research. Fred is an encyclopedia. I don't know about an encyclopedia. I feel like AJ Pickett. If you want Dungeons and Dragons monster lore, AJ Pickett is your encyclopedia. He's got a very good memory. Me, I am... What do? I tend to make stuff that is a little bit outside of the circle or square. Outside of the boundaries that people are used to. And I also make stuff that other people generally just will not make. I'm glad that I am very likable. That's good news. That means that you'll come back and watch more of my stuff. I hope everybody liked Robert's gaming room. He sent it to me a long time ago. I have only just finally sort of put it all together. Although there weren't that many elements to it, I didn't really want to put it out straight away. I really wanted to talk to Robert first, but he said don't worry about it. And you know, that is the sort of thing that I'm looking for. If you want to do a collaboration with me, I'm looking for people who can show me. If you give me about 6 static images, I can put that into a slide. Or if you give me like 2 or 3 minutes of video footage, I can cut it together into something and put it on the channel and show people what you're doing. And I think that has been wonderful. There is more to come. There are more of those videos coming. So if you like that one, trust me, there's more coming. How's the job search coming? Okay, well, I've got a job interview on Monday. It's a group interview, so there'll be about 30 other people in the room at the same time. It's a tough environment, and there's one job on offer. So we'll see. I don't know how it's going to go. There are not a lot of jobs in New Zealand for the number of people applying for jobs. Thumbs up, everybody. Thank you for the thumbs up. I do appreciate it. It's always good. It does indicate to people that they're watching something that's worth their time. Although I do feel that sometimes the thumbs down are just a product of people just putting a thumbs down just for the sake of it. Rivers RPG channel. Scott, what do you got here? AJ Pickett talks about you often. I know. I talk about AJ Pickett a lot myself. Another channel for those of you who don't know, I have a very good relationship with AJ Pickett. I really like his channel, and he has helped me a lot to try to broaden things up. So when it came to the merchandise stuff, I really had a lot of help from him and from getting that to work. It hasn't made any money, but to actually get it working, I really needed his help for that. And I've also had quite a lot of help from him with regard to Patreon, and you know, really he runs his channel off Patreon. That's what really keeps it ticking along. He doesn't have to worry about things like if the AdSense revenue disappears, that's just, cream on top of what he's making, and he does this full time. I can't really do this full time and keep the house, and I'm not living in my family's orchard, so I can't really do that. So yeah, I have to find a job. I really like DM Wally, who does puzzles, for those of you who are interested. Now, like I said, if you have questions, whether you're a player or a Dungeon Master, throw them out there now while I'm still here, because I won't be coming back for another live stream today. I have got other things I have to get done. And the edited version for this will get released, hopefully sometime today. So, and also Drow Bard, who does a lot of character builds for Dungeons & Dragons 5e. I really feel like he does very, very good content, if that's the sort of thing you're really interested in. My channel's not really built around that. Draven Swiftbow, another channel that I do follow quite a lot and is featured on my channel. And Roll for Damage hasn't done anything for quite a long time. I believe he's changed the name of his channel too. He's still got some really good stuff there. It's just a shame he probably just doesn't have the time to do that. I know he's invested a lot of time in doing other things, so it's been a bit tricky for him. But yeah, AJ and DM Wally, really good channels that I follow. So yeah, those are the channels that sort of I am very much connected with, and I have a lot of interactions with. I really do like what the DM Lear channel is doing. Luke's doing a really good job there. I really think he's really figured out what people want, and he's taken all of his long stream form content and put it onto Twitch TV, which was a smart idea. I think that has really been quite useful for a lot of people. Okay, you will have noticed that a lot of my long stream content is no longer available, and it's sort of disappearing. It's just that YouTube just doesn't like it. If they encouraged me, then I would do it, but it's not really worth it. Okay, John, how are you going? How about Warlock Pact of the Chain Imp while invisible? Spreading a bag of flour over maybe 10 to 15 foot squares. You still have to kind of have an idea of where the invisible creature is. Yeah, well, look, a warlock with an imp. The imp, look, your dungeon master is probably not going to allow you to cover more than 5 foot square with a bag of flour. So that means you have to have a bag of flour for every 5 foot square. I know that's what I had to contend with when I was dealing with other dungeon masters. It's probably what I would do. It's probably what a lot of other dungeon masters will do. So when you're using a bag of flour to cover an area so you can pick up that invisible creature, you've got to remember you've got to do it really fast. If you can't get it done quickly and you can't sort of like crop dust the area, they are just going to move out of the way so you can't pick them up. And they just won't step into the locations where there's flour floating or on the ground. So not necessarily the easiest thing to do. See invisibility still the best way to find invisible creatures. Rivers, yeah, that room was awesome. It was. Robert's room he's not finished. I have asked him when he's finished to send me another video clip if he's willing, and I feel like he probably will. And who knows, maybe some other people have got some stuff they do that they would like to share. And when I say share, I do mean something that you've taken, whether it be video or photo, that I can show other people on the channel rather than written content. If you've got a particular topic you want to talk about, then you need to talk about that topic in a video and throw it at me so I can look at it and see if I like the idea of putting it up on my channel. I'm probably not in a situation where I can do a conversation between two people. That's not to say it won't happen. It probably will. I've been talking with a fellow by the name of Mark, and that might well happen. But my priority right now is I have to get a paying job to survive. It just has to happen. Do you have any recommendations for a new D&D player looking for a group if none of my friends are interested? I think I did a video on how to find D&D players. So if you go into my channel and do a search on my channel for how to find D&D players, that's probably the best way. I used Facebook. I used Meetups. Meetups is expensive now, so I don't use that. You have to pay. So I used Facebook, and I put the feelers out that way. I used my local game stores. I went and approached them and played in public games to pull players from the public games into my home game. So that's a lot of sort of stuff I used to do. There's lots of different ways to do it. Check out that video, though. It covers a lot of those sorts of topics. I need a drink of water, sorry. Jormathan, I'm not sure if I got that right. Jormathan. I apologize if I have pronounced your name incorrectly. It looks like Jonathan, but you've got an M in there. New to D&D, love your channel. It's helps me out a lot. I'm glad. I suspect it's probably the breakdown of the small rules. I know that seems to be a big draw for people. There's a lot of the very quick, 2, 3, 4 minute, up to 6 minutes sometimes. Sometimes they get a bit longer. The shorter videos on some of the Dungeons and Dragons rules. I know that's been really useful. You won't see quite so many of those because there's, the stuff we're dealing with now is much more complicated and can't be done in 2 or 3 minutes. Even though there's somebody out there, I'm sure, who reckons it can be. So if it can be, you make it, because I won't be. It can't be done. So all of my really short videos are pretty much done and dusted. There'll be the occasional miniature showcase that might be quite short, though. Interviewing with 30 people sounds terrifying. Yeah, no, three people, 2 people maybe. I had one with 6 people, and that felt stressful. Yeah, it's just the stress, the stress in terms of the connection of the internet. Particularly if I'm doing it over the internet, it's very, very hard to sort of maintain. I do have FiberMax in New Zealand, but I am also living in Helensville, and that's out in the Wops. So all sorts of things can happen in New Zealand. As people have discovered, when they try to post things to me and they don't know why it hasn't arrived. It's called snail mail. Here they deliver it about 3 times a week if I'm lucky. Hi, how's it going, Fred? Yes, you're late, but it's all right. That's no problems. Zycam, how's it going? Zycam Bubble Wrap. Oh, I like the name. I would love to hear your thoughts on Dragon of Icespire Peak. What is it? What is the best way to support you so you can acquire it? Okay, Zycam, I'm in New Zealand, so I can't get it. Not till the 3rd of September. So I've looked online, and what I've done is I have checked the price on the book depository, which is a bit more expensive than if I get it from Amazon, but it will take me anywhere from 3 or 4 weeks to get it if it doesn't get stolen, because of just stupid stuff that happens around my location. Things are getting quite tight in New Zealand, so people, there's a lot more theft going on and a lot more other criminal activity. So unfortunately, and also too, snail mail, they literally deliver 3 times a week if I'm lucky. And they might kick it into a puddle or dump it somewhere, who knows. So I will get it. Mighty Ape in New Zealand is a lot closer to me, and I'll probably try to get it from them because it'll be just a couple more bucks than Amazon, but I can probably get it quite quickly. But you won't see me with a copy of that till sometime after the 3rd of September. Remember, the rest of the world doesn't get access to it until after then. If you're in North America, it's a different story. And if you were to try and post it to me, people have tried to post stuff to me in the past, and it takes a while. Okay. GG, okay. Look, sorry I didn't, but I hadn't read the comment. Sorry about that. GG. What snacks do you eat while playing D&D? My kids, Joe and Monica, like to eat M&Ms, pizza, Dr. Peppers, and Snake Do sandwiches. Okay, so my body is a bit older. My stomach is a bit messed up. So the only thing I can really eat is salted chips, ready salted chips. It can't have anything else. It can have sunflower oil in there, or most oils are all right and I can eat them. I can't have sugar. So if I have something like chocolate, I can have it, provided it doesn't have other things in there that I can't eat. So it's a bit complicated. Usually I have an apple and maybe some potato chips that I can eat. Popcorn with salt is really about it in terms of junk food. Most of my home group, in terms of the junk food they eat, is a variety of different things. It'd be everything you've quoted. Right now I know that they often eat the sugary jelly babies, or jelly beans. A lot of that sort of stuff gets consumed at the table. I can't eat those anymore though. It's Jonathan. Okay, I've got it, Jonathan. Well, that's a lot easier for me to pronounce. Vitro Vlad Windmaster. How to use bag of flour? ? Well, yes, that's right. I did. I talked about 14 different ways you can use a bag of flour in Dungeons and Dragons. For cooking, of course. One can eat those bland rations just for so long. Well, yeah, fair enough. Absolutely. Hi, Aaron. How's it going? How are you doing, Fred? Yeah, I'm doing all right. Yeah, the job hunt is going on. There isn't an awful lot to sort of apply for right now. I've pretty much applied for everything, but I do have a job interview coming up. So hopefully I'm one of the 30 people who they say yes to for the one position that's available. I hear there are more sheep than people in New Zealand. Yes, there is. In the past, there were 28 million sheep in New Zealand. There's a lot less now. I think it's dropped down to between 22 and 25 million. There are 4.5 million people in New Zealand. And that is only because our government has a very, very lax immigration policy. So because the immigration policy is so poor and weak, we get a lot of people who try to get from India, China, Malaysia, South Africa, because a lot of people coming from there are fleeing for their lives, come to New Zealand, and then they go from New Zealand to Australia, and then they try to get to America or Canada. Some people stay here, not all of them leave, but yeah. So that's really the only reason. Otherwise, the population would probably stay about the same. We just don't have the infrastructure for a big population. If our population grew, the amount of tax being paid would not increase enough to pay for all the infrastructure required. It is a country. It's a country that really is a rural country. It's not a big. It doesn't have a big infrastructure or no manufacturing of any kind really. I was talking about the 30 people interview, which sounds terrifying. Right. My voice is about to go. No, it's all right. It's no problem. What's that, Fred Hubber? What do you got here? Just brought the essentials. So far looking good, but have not fully gone through the adventure. Now, I know Fred Hubber is very, very picky, and if he said so far it's looking good, that's a good sign. But just like the Lost Mine of Phandelver, it will not matter, because I am nearing the end of the Lost Mine of Phandelver in terms of the content I can make. And so the Dungeons & Dragons Essentials kit will be the new featured Dungeon Master Guide. And I will continue to do the Curse of Strad. And from time to time, when I can figure out how to make it work, I will do some Dungeon Master Guides on the Rise of Tiamat. I do not know that I will necessarily do anything on the Horde of the Dragon Queen. Just because that adventure has caused me so much grief in the past and I disliked it so much. That doesn't mean it won't ever happen. I just don't know if I'll do it at this point. I tend to try to do the ones that people are going to try to use more often. And I never found that the Horde of the Dragon Queen Dungeon Master Guides were that popular. But the Lost Mine of Phandelver, very popular. Curse of Strad would be next. And after that, it's really more the general stuff. Because not everybody's here for the pre-published adventure guides that I do. You know, some people are looking for something else. And to be honest, you know, for me to be able to talk to something like the Dungeons and Dragons Essentials Kit and the adventure in there, I really need to run it. It's not just about reading the adventure. You have to be able to run it to make it, give it some sort of authentic advice. Otherwise, you're talking from a place down below, out of your backside, basically. Candice. Hi, Candice Hart. I'm new to DMing and your videos have helped so much. Thank you for being awesome and making these. You are welcome, Candice. I hope I got your name right. I'm losing my voice, so my ability to pronounce anything is getting harder and harder. Okay, never mind. I thought you meant you were being interviewed by 30 people in one room. No. Now, 2 or 3 people I might consider, but 30 people too. The 30. Oh, you're talking about the job interview. The job interview. Yeah, there are 30 people that'll be in the room at the same time, all being interviewed. It's called a group interview, a group job interview. It's something that's commonly used in New Zealand because there are so many people going for the same job. So the job I'm applying for is just a customer service position at Bunnings Warehouse. It's a hardware place, and there will be probably 30,000 applications, or maybe more, maybe 3,000 applications. So that's what I'm talking about. Zycam, is Patreon the best way to support you? Yes, it is on the channel. It absolutely is. Now, the reason why I say Patreon is the best way to support me is because Patreon only takes 5% of whatever you pay me. And then there's the transactions that take place with PayPal to get it to me in New Zealand. And there's a cost there as well. But it's vastly smaller than something related to Super Chat. You know, YouTube takes 50% of AdSense revenue. Not only that, if you're doing, Super Chats, AdSense, they take 50%. If you're buying stuff online through Amazon, I get about 5% on whatever you buy. It doesn't affect the cost to you, but it's about 5% in terms of revenue to me for whatever you buy. So the best way is Patreon, but if you can't do Patreon, just use the Amazon affiliate links. And if you're not in North America, there are international links that you can use that I usually have listed down in the video. Aaron, I would love a Storm King's Thunder Dungeon Master Guide. Problem is, I played in Storm King's Thunder. I didn't Dungeon Master it. I Dungeon Mastered 2 sessions. And Storm King's Thunder looks like a well laid out adventure because of the flow chart that's provided and the way it's structured. But there are walls of text in that adventure, which Simon, one of my friends, showed me. He was Dungeon Mastering for that adventure. And it is incredibly hard because they do not index. Wizards of the Coast, I don't know what they're thinking. They will not index their Dungeons and Dragons adventures. They'll use a contents page, but it's not enough. And so therefore it can be really difficult to actually find the information you need. Now things like the Lost Mine of Phandelver they have an index in them. The Hunt for the Thessal Hydra adventure and some of the smaller adventures, they have formatted and laid out with big headings and they're broken up into small chunks so it's easy to find the information you want, which is honestly why I say that the Lost Mine of Phandelver is a good adventure, just because of the way it's laid out and the ease in which in terms of finding stuff exists compared to other adventures they make. Because the Lost Mine of Phandelver is laid out very much like an old school adventure going way back to the original adventures, such as Keep on the Borderlands and the Isle of Dread and adventures like that came out of the basic system before it became Advanced Dungeons and Dragons. That's really important for making it easy to run for a Dungeon Master. Scott, I love your Curse of Strad series, very helpful. Yes, I'm glad you like that, Scott. I enjoy doing the Curse of Strad series. I haven't decided what I'll do next. I guess it's like I said, a lot of the videos I do based on my comfort level and when I feel like I'm ready to do it. And sometimes I just have a moment that pops up and like all the bits and pieces to the jigsaw puzzle that I've been thinking about come together. And I will often start notes and I don't complete them and I just don't know where to go with it, and so I stop and leave it. That's happening with Glass Staff from the Lost Mine of Phandelver, for example. I haven't finished that. I started the notes, I haven't finished it because I just don't feel like it feels like it's too hard to manage. We just did Van Richten's Tower. Okay, it's a good place to be. Joe, Fred, you ever thought of moving to the United States of D&D? D&D Beyond is hiring. I know D&D Beyond is hiring. I don't know that I'm necessarily their kettle of fish. Yeah, I really, and I love where I live, and I need that connection with my family. All of my family live pretty close to me. They're not that far away, and that's quite important to me. I don't have a wife or a partner or kids or anything like that. I don't have a partner anymore. I did, but I don't now. No, so I haven't really thought about going to the United States. Okay. If you could write up a text with all your DM advice and self-publish it, I'm sure many of us would pick it up. Yeah, it's the time factor. I just don't have the time. I'm going to keep all of my books, and the day might come when I turn it into a text document. But I guess my feeling is that video is, particularly live stream, but particularly video is a good way of communicating stuff, because you're capturing a lot of different things at the same time. There are only a few select individuals who just want to read. So yeah, it might happen. You never know. Sir Mordekainen, how's it going, Simon? Storm King's Thunder. So this is this is my mate who DM'd Storm King's Thunder, is a sandbox. So it was very hard to prepare for a session as a dungeon master, as you never had any idea where the PCs would wander off to. Exactly. And I know Simon would really appreciate when we would tell him in advance at the end of the session what we plan to do and where we plan to go, because it gave him time to prepare. But it is a sandbox, and it's not a very well structured sandbox, unfortunately. Unlike, Curse of Strad is a sandbox, but it's still structured in such a way that you can manage it. And a lot of the other adventures that are more sandboxy, like the Lost Mine of Phandelver, are much more easy to manage. Leon Garnett, what do you got here? I like the new format. Old D&D and Pathfinder adventures are a mess of information. Yes, they can be. I would say if you go right back to very, very old adventures for Dungeons and Dragons, they are structured quite well. The Pathfinder adventures, I have run them and found them quite useful, but there are times when I get lost in the walls of text trying to find stuff. Sir Mordekainen, what do you got here? What do you got, Simon? Also, a lot of Storm King's Thunder wasn't used as the players didn't go to several chapters. Yeah, absolutely. I can see that happening. Also, I think one of the things that trips up a lot of dungeon masters is, and I know Simon would comment on this quite a lot when it comes to Storm King's Thunder, is the areas are so large you can't draw them out. It's pointless. They're so big that you really can't draw them out and use miniatures. It's just impractical. Most of the time, he would just dump a grid on the table, plonk a miniature down, and there was no point of reference because the area was so huge. We're in the middle of the room, it's big open space. Aaron, hey Fred, I'm publishing, so if you would like to put out a book or something, I'm willing to help. Well, thank you, Aaron. I really do appreciate that. That sounds really cool. I feel like the only way that would be possible is if I either scanned or posted all of my notes to you. All the notes for a lot of the video content that I've made. But I don't honestly believe, I know people think 12,000 subscribers and the channel's quite large, but the reality is that most of the time I maybe get 200, maybe 300, if I'm lucky 400 people who watch a video. And then it takes years before, there may be 1,000 people have watched or a couple of thousand people have watched that video. So I'm still a very, very small outfit. And the day that it comes that it's clear that it really needs to move to another level, then I will certainly consider it. But, I don't really want to turn my hobby into a job. I'm always afraid that if I turn my hobby into a job, it's no longer fun. And right now, it's still fun. And I had about 2 weeks ago, it was not so fun. It was becoming a bit much. And I was trying to rely on it. Crypto, how's it going, Crypto? Our DM homebrew a sandbox world for us to muck about in, but he wants to know what our plans are for the next session so he can prepare. P.S. This is my first visit to your channel. Oh, well, welcome. Check out more. Yeah, no, absolutely check out more. Well, see, it makes a lot of sense. Unless you're the sort of dungeon master who is able to sort of just create a couple of different sort of scenarios and just plonk, this is what's going to be at the south, north, east, west, and it's more location based and so forth, then that's all very well. But that's a lot of material to put together. Yeah. I turned my hobby writing into a hobby, D&D into a hobby. Yeah. I totally get it. But I know, Aaron, that you also have a day job, and I have to have a day job. You're welcome, Crypto. There are plenty of videos that I've done that should help you. I don't know that I've got a video specifically on how to run a sandbox adventure, but I do have a lot of advice on how to deal with the process of dungeon mastering on the fly. I do have a lot of stuff that will help you with that. Okay, I am about to lose my voice. It's been an hour. I need to go. It's 12 o'clock. Hey, thank you there's so many people showed up today. I really do appreciate it. It's wonderful. It's great to see. But I think it's definitely time for me to go and rest my voice. We want my voice working so that hopefully I can produce another live stream tomorrow. That would be good, wouldn't it? What would be the video I might do tomorrow? How about ignoring the dice in Dungeons and Dragons? That's going to be quite contentious, but I know nobody's really talked about it. Not that much. So that would possibly be a topic I might talk about in the future. Why not? Sounds like fun. Okay, so thank you to my patrons. Thank you to everybody who showed up. It's been wonderful, fantastic, and I really do enjoy the live streams. It's one of the bits that I enjoy the most. I do not enjoy editing video for hours and hours and hours, but talking with you guys live is great. So whether it's day, night, morning, afternoon, evening, whatever, wherever you are in the world, look after your friends and your family and yourself. And hey, till next time, keep rolling those 20s.